As Winston throws to the end zone, it is caught. Touchdown, Elijah Moore.
Jameis Winston extending the play, gets out there, and Elijah Moore gets behind the secondary. Both feet look like they're down inbounds for the touchdown for the Browns.
Going to talk about Elijah Moore a minute here. Jonathan Peterlin, 92.3 The Fan, joining us on the Western Hotline. Jonathan, good morning. You know what? In Cleveland, I want to say, it's always interesting in Cleveland, right? There's lately, how many years in a row? The Browns used to be the factory of sadness and drought like the Bills, and the Bills have become much more interesting. And I want to say at least the Browns have become a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. On my show in Cleveland, we had a guy that came on and did mock drafts with us basically every week, and he was our draft guy. And he was like, "Wow, I mean, that was just the most interesting draft ever." It's like, no, that's a Thursday through Monday for us. That's kind of what we get these days. 2
quarterbacks trading down from number 2.
Yeah.
I mean,
5 quarterbacks now. Well, one's hurt, so a 4-way competition.
Before we get to Elijah Moore, what's the feel on first on the quarterback room and how that whole thing played out now that Shedeur Sanders is in the mix?
I mean, so it worked out pretty great for someone like myself that likes Shedeur in that there was so much pressure. They took him at number 2 overall, and people would have expected him to be a top 5 quarterback in the league, something that comes with being the number 2 overall pick. As a 5th-round pick, you just get to see what you have. And if it works out, great. And if it doesn't, now we have 2 first-round picks for the 2026 class. So, I think people are pretty positive overall. More importantly, though, this season was going to suck, guys. It was going to absolutely stink. And now at least there's some intrigue. There's some interest attached to it, even if it ends up stinking at the end of the day. Shedeur's interesting. I don't know that Dylan Gabriel's necessarily interesting. But between him, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco in the mix, it's going to be a fun training camp into what at least isn't just an unwatchable regular season.
Is there any fear-bunkering or sadness about no Travis Hunter? Because when Joe and I were talking about it, you might have a bad season, but watching a player like that might be really exciting, and the Browns, of course, stepped out of that.
So that's one of the funnier things to come out of the week is that leading up into the Travis Hunter, into the actual draft, I kept hammering to people, you need to pay attention. Andrew Berry doesn't speak this way about people. He's calling him the Ohtani of football. He doesn't speak that way. This isn't a thing that he ever does. And so I was like, just be careful, because there's nobody that loves playing with the media more than Andrew Berry. And so he did exactly what he's done historically here, which is just pull the rug out from underneath people, and that's how it worked. But, Browns fans were kind of upset. I myself was kind of upset. But I like Mason Graham. I like getting another first-round pick. Ultimately, just the draft got this team interesting, and that's all I care about.
Smokescreen season there in Cleveland on Hunter. Jonathan Peterlin joining us on the Western Hotline.
So, we want to get to Elijah Moore here, Jonathan. He was in for a visit yesterday. We had an eventful day talking about wide receiver, and then it came out that he's in town visiting. And that's a player that I'd like going back to the draft, but you can look at the targets. You can look at that it wasn't that efficient. What do you think the story was for him in the last 2 years in Cleveland, and whether a team acquiring him would be getting something that could be meaningful?
So pretty forgetful, if you may describe it as quickly as I possibly could. Pretty forgetful. There's not many things that I thought to myself like Elijah Moore stood out. He was good for a couple games a year. Last year it was the Denver game, Baltimore game, and the Denver game was really it was overshadowed by Jerry Jeudy having 215 yards receiving in that game too. I'll say this. I don't think he's been given a true fair shake of it when you look at the quarterbacks the Browns have had over the previous couple years. Having Watson play as often as he did, and then going into whether a combination of Flacco or even last year Jameis Winston, but prior to that, Flacco, P.J. Walker, and DTR, he's been given nothing as far as quarterbacks are concerned. I actually thought he was a better locker room guy than what he was always perceived to be as with the Jets. I talked to people, they liked him in that locker room, but at one point last year, he was suspended for disciplinary reasons for a game, and we never found out what that was. There was just so much chaos, so much everything happening. Browns were never going to tell us. I never found out, which is it's a rare thing to not have somebody be like, hey, so this is actually what happened. It just never really happened. So I can't speak on that, but what I do know is that the people in the locker room did like him. It wasn't like a problem, and really the way to encapsulate the 2 years was just pretty forgetful.
Yeah.
5 years from now, I will not remember a single thing Elijah Moore did.
How about deployment and skill set? What type of player, where he was when they did use him?
Yeah, so they tried to get him with the deep ball, but it just never. Again, I want to be like, oh, he was a deep ball threat, but he really wasn't. It's not like he was hauling down any of these catches. Now, again, were there times where he was open and we just had bad quarterbacks and they just missed him? Yeah, that did happen. For sure that happened. There was definitely plays where I'm like, oh, Elijah Moore could have had a good play, big yardage there, and it just never materialized. Do I think he'd be a 1,000-yard receiver with the Bills? No, I don't. But I do think Josh Allen makes everyone better, but Josh Allen would make him considerably better. But I think the concerns you have to have with him is less about what you expect from a talent perspective and more about what you'd be getting as far as around the team and the player himself. And in the 2 years he was here, he had that one hiccup that we still don't know what happened there. But outside of that, I mean, I'm telling you, he was much better than he was with the Jets. When we got him from New York, Jets fans made it seem like he was the biggest diva, and I didn't experience that.
All right. Well, enjoy this season. May it be interesting.
For now, at least enjoy the Cavs for now, right?
Yeah,
at least
that's right.
something fun.
That's right.
For a while.
Yeah, well, you know how the sports world works. It gives us something to balance it out with. How about that win last night? It was just absolutely insane. So we'll enjoy that. And I'm going to enjoy Shedeur Sanders just giving me a bunch of content.
Yes.
Very good. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, guys.
92.3 The Fan, Jonathan Peterlin on the Browns, and a little bit on Elijah Moore there. One thing about the deep ball, it is missing, has been missing from this offense for multiple seasons. I mean, Diggs dropped the one in the playoff game. That was a deep ball that was there.
I was looking back. I was looking for a stat that I had on the deep ball during the break, and I'm searching through Twitter. And if you know now, searching through Twitter is like it's impossible because everything's so jumbled. I found an article I wrote on our website from 2023, right after Dorsey got fired, and I had a series of numbers about how, like, yes, turnovers was the story, right? When Dorsey got fired, they couldn't stop turning the ball over. But if you looked deeper at the beginning of that year, the big play disappeared. Remember that? Explosive plays were just missing in action from the Bills' offense. And last year they did return, but they were not like they were runs, right? They were James Cook runs and a couple of Allen runs and a couple of like
Coleman
off script plays where he's throwing it deep to Shakir. But it's really been 2 seasons in a row now where you don't see guys running open down the field. If you are seeing a play like that, like Matt Collins in the AFC Championship game, it is Allen having to make a perfect pass. He can't miss by even an inch because otherwise it'll be incomplete.
Jerry in New Jersey is back with us. Hey, Jerry, what's up?
Hey, guys, how are you? Thanks for taking the call. So, just trying to think about what's been going on the last couple of days. And I think a big point is being missed on why Bean seemed defensive yesterday. Because everyone is kind of backing into their default positions, and both sides are right. There is a definite lack of top-quality receiving depth on the team. But then Bean is correct that you don't really need that when Allen is running the offense. So then you look at why the Bills have lost all the playoff games in the last 4 years, and it's clear that the main difference is the Chiefs have Chris Jones, the Bills do not. So if we play kind of this game, what if Von Miller doesn't get hurt, but Chris Jones does? The end of the game obviously is different. But I think the big factor that I think is overlooked is how bad Brandon Bean has been in identifying defensive line talent. And that is critical because unlike the other positions where they actually do get low-round draft picks, where they do pick up street free agents and the guys do play well, that has not happened on the defensive line. So when you take a look at the rogue cast of characters that have rotated through one Bills drive, the defensive line has been very, very bad. And he has spent a lot of draft capital, a lot of free agent capital on people who just have not performed. And I think that, to me, is part of the reason he's been defensive because, he brought up the year they drafted Russo and Boogie. Well, Boogie was a bad pick. And if you remember what he said after the draft, they actually had a trade in place where they were going to pick up more draft capital, but they loved Boogie so much that they stayed in place. Well, that's, emblematic of just, I don't know if it's the team structure, I don't know if it's the drafting, but they just have not been able to hit on those defensive line picks.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the reason he might have been a little bit defensive, because there really is I don't know if you could point to a single draft pick that you could say, you know what, that guy overplayed his draft pick, whether it's the first round or any of the other rounds that they've done. When you look at the free agent.
You mean on the defensive line?
On the defensive line, yeah. Because almost every other position, we have players who clearly outplayed their position in the draft or in free agency, but not on the defensive line. That is one position where you cannot point to maybe one or two guys, but that's it. And this is in 8 years of drafting.
Thanks, Jerry. I think that's a really good point, and I like just spinning through it. If you're to label all the Bills draft picks that overplayed their draft status, where they got picked, you won't find a single defensive lineman, and I think that's right. Who did? Harrison Phillips? Who did? Who outplayed? Because if you want to get to linebacker, I got Milano. Got Milano. If you want to say Bernard, maybe. At defensive back, I've got Benford.
Yep.
Safety, they haven't had enough picks at safety to really do that. But
you don't really have a good answer to this.
No, you don't have a good defensive lineman that outplayed their draft status. And Rousseau has played like a number one pick. I guess you'd want to say he's one of the best in the league. To outplay that draft status, that might be tough. To the point about defensive tackle, again, like this is where yesterday's reaction was all they talk about is receiver. That's all they do, and that's not reality. One of the things we said going into this draft was, you want to know what position they actually undervalue? Defensive tackle.
Yeah.
2 picks from the Ed Oliver draft till this last weekend.
Right.
2, Ed Oliver, Dwayne Carter. That's it.
They doubled it.
We said, do they value the interior to defensive line? Will they pick that guy in the first pick? Because we never see boards. What we do is we look and see what have they done over 8 years. And over that period of time, defensive tackle has not gotten attention.